So this lesson we're going to look at the concept of leadership in sports psychology and how leadership of groups or individuals can affect performance. So what do we need to look at? We need to look at the qualities of a good leader. The three main types of style, which are autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. The effectiveness of those styles with different kind of groups and situations. Briefly on prescribed and emergent leaders, those two ways of being appointed, and then the two main models, so Fiedler and Chelaguri. So, qualities of a good leader, this is really straightforward and fairly much common sense, but just make sure that you've got 3 or 4 of these in your locker that you can remember that are actual answers that are going to gain credit. So don't give too many similar answers, etc. But take anything from the list. One word answers, probably a 2 or a 3 mark question. So the 3 main types of leader, and then we'll look at the main 2 in a little bit more detail. So first of all, autocratic. So autocratic leadership is where the leader makes all of the decisions. This is kind of traditional style of leadership in sport, and we would call this leader-centered. It's based around what the leader does. So traditional old school type of leadership, Sir Alex Ferguson, a bit of an example. You're going to do it my way or I'll get rid of you kind of idea. The other main style is democratic. So a democratic leader takes the group's ideas and opinions into account. So they will consult the group and ask for input and opinions. At the end of that, they'll still make a decision, a democratic leader, but they'll invite the players to get involved. So therefore, we say that it's a bit more player-centered. So this is more really of a modern approach in sport. Someone like Sven-Göran Eriksson was one of the first to bring it into football in this country, a new style of leadership which involved the players. Further on that scale is laissez-faire, and we need to cover this, but we don't really have that many examples from sport because it doesn't really happen. Because laissez-faire is just allowing the players to do it themselves completely. Just leave them alone. The leader doesn't actually make any decisions at all, and the players do it all. So there's an example there you can see about Lancashire Cricket Club, which I guess is a little bit different anyway because the captain is probably, certainly in them days, was more important than the coach. Some teams didn't even really have a coach. But the captain will make all the decisions on the pitch anyway. But other than that, really in sport, we don't tend to get laissez-faire style of leadership. So, when would we use the two main styles of autocratic and democratic? Well, if we take different types of groups to work with, if we look at age to start with, older people tend to prefer autocratic style. A little bit older, experienced, tend to prefer an autocratic style. And younger people, it might be more useful to use democratic style. Sometimes people get this wrong, students get this one wrong. If you think of this from a point of view that the democratic style would be of more benefit to a younger person, do you really want to be telling that the young person for their own development all of the time and making all their decisions for them? It would be more useful for their development, motivation, confidence, etc., to get involved and make their own decisions for their own learning. So that's why a young democratic style would be useful with younger people. Research tells us that females prefer democratic style. And that males prefer autocratic. So that's just that one just comes from research that's what those genders prefer. So that's the way around that we would put those two. Democratic style for experts as well. So more experienced players that have knowledge, obviously it would be more beneficial to get that use of that knowledge and ask their opinion. So a real top performer, you might want to consult with them, because it might be that they even know more than you as the leader, as the coach, and have some real valuable opinions. Whereas novices don't have that knowledge, so autocratic style may be more useful with a novice, so you can teach them. Large group suits autocratic style, and this is obvious. It's just that if you've got a big group, then you don't want too many opinions being thrown into the mix. So autocratic style tends to be more useful with the large group. A small group or individual or a pair even would be more useful to be democratic, because you've got the chance really to allow those small groups to have an input and still keep it under control. If you haven't got much time, again, so think of a half-time team talk, for example, 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something. You don't want to be open it out to discussion. Keep it autocratic. Whereas if there's lots of time, we're in pre-season or we're away for a training camp or something like that, get the players involved. And danger, so the type of task that we're doing, dangerous tasks, outdoor activities, things like that, we need to be autocratic just for safety reasons, and if there isn't any danger with the task, we can be democratic. This bit is around how a leader is appointed, so it's as simple as that, and there are two types, and as you can see, we've got emergent leader. An emergent leader is one that's elected from within the team, so this is within. So this would be like a natural progression, something like a captain is chosen by the team members themselves, and that leader emerges from within the group. You can see the other type of leader is prescribed. So this is a prescribed leader is appointed from outside. So this is externally appointed, and they come from outside to lead. Right, the two models then. The two models can be quite complicated, and you need to know them inside out. So obviously these models would be more likely to be involved in a longer mark type question. So Fiedler's contingency model. It's a situation-specific model, and it suggests that certain leadership is valuable in one situation, but it may not be in a different situation. So different leadership is contingent, hence the name, on two things. So first of all, we'll look at the leader's style, but also the situation. Alright, so we're looking at a bit of an interactionist model. So the two types of leadership fit in nicely with what we've talked about before. So they are called relationship motivated leadership, and this is where the leader focuses on interpersonal relationships, tries to develop relationships with the players, between the leader and the players, and within the players themselves. Task motivated isn't bothered about that. They're more bothered about achieving the task, focusing on the task at hand and making sure that we do the task. So just have a think now about which style fits to autocratic and democratic. So I'm hoping that you came up with the fact that the relationship style is democratic and the task motivated style is autocratic. You were able to get away with calling them democratic and autocratic within one of your answers, but you should also be aware, in case they're in the question, of the different names that Fiedler calls them, so relationship style and task style. So, how does it work? Well, Fiedler talks about the situation as well. So, we've talked about the personality, the style of the leader, but Fiedler also talks about how the situation affects leadership. And you can see at the top left box up here that he talks about situational favourableness. And that might sound like a bit of a silly thing, you know, but we're basically saying how favourable is the situation for the leader to lead. So it's not how favourable it is for the players to perform, it's how favourable it is for the leader. So you can see there's 4 things that that affect the favourableness. And basically if these 4 things are all good, so all these 4, then it's more favourable situation for the leader to lead. So, very quickly, we've got the leader-member relations. So if the players like the leader, respect the leader, etc., that will be high favourableness. That makes it more easy for the leader to lead that group. If the task is well defined and structured well, that gives the leader some power and influence over the players. As does the fact that if they have some authority. So, can the leader reward and punish players, for example? And what facilities and etc. have we got available? So if we've got nice facilities, lots of backroom staff, you know, all nice equipment and all that kind of stuff, then again, that's just all the infrastructure behind the leader makes their job a lot easier. Obviously, that can be on the flip side. So all of those things may be really bad, and that would make the situation less favourable for the leader to lead the group. So that could be a question by itself. So these 4 things you need to know and remember to be able to put into an answer around how the situation affects leadership. The next bit that you need to do is be able to relate that and to the 2 leadership styles, because Fiedler suggests that different leadership styles are more appropriate in different levels of favourableness. So this is shown over here on the graph, where you can see that basically we're saying that autocratic style, which is the yellow, is more favourable in most and least favourable situations. So in a very favourable situation, when it's all going well, it may be that you need to keep the players on their toes and avoid complacency, etc. So autocratic style may be beneficial here. And on the flip side of that, in the least favourable situation, so if it's all gone horribly wrong and they don't like you and we don't know what we're doing and we haven't got much power or facilities or anything like that, well, let's just be autocratic so that we can, you know, at least give it a go and say, right, this is what we're going to do, like it or not, this is the plan. The other one is it's relationship or democratic so this is the green line, in moderately favourable situations. So if these 4 things, the favourableness, are sort of moderate, okay, that we maybe, that I would relate this sometimes to like a new leader, where we're sussing each other out, the players are sussing out the leader, maybe we quite like them but we're not quite sure yet, new tactics, that kind of thing. So in that kind of situation, maybe it's more preferable to use a democratic relationship orientated style here that would be more used to build the team spirit, etc., and develop teamwork that way. If all of that doesn't make sense, that's the key part. So this box and what I've just described here, you just need to remember that it's task orientated or autocratic style for most and least favourable situations, so for those 2 situations, and it's relationship orientated style or democratic for moderately favourable situations. So you need to know those 3 situations and what style to use in those 3 situations. So, Challadurri. So, yes, these two models are done by people with silly long names, but should be a bit easier to recognise or remember. So, Challadurri's model, as you can see, it's a multi-dimensional model. There's lots of parts to it. So, Challadurri suggests that the leadership is dependent on these things. So, the situation, the members, characteristics, and then looks at the influence of leader behaviour on two outcomes: the performance of the group and the satisfaction of the members. The key point is this bottom point. So the more the leader's actual behaviour matches what's required of the situation and what the group want, then that's going to lead to better group performance and the satisfaction of the players. They're going to be happier with it and they're going to play better, basically. So that's the key point. Basically, Challadurri model, you need to know the 8 sections to the model. So there are 3 parts. So the first part is this, where we look at antecedents. So that's a word we've talked about before. So antecedents, things that affect stuff. So these 3 things all affect leader behaviour. So we've got the situation, we've got the leader, and we've got the members or the group. And you've got to know how each of those 3 factors influences the leader behaviour, which is the second column. So this is over here. So you need to be able to put these together. So you need to talk about that situational characteristics influence the required behaviour. So a certain situation gives us a required behaviour. We can link that back to something that we talked about before. So for example, it might be that the situation is dangerous. So we talked about this before. Then that gives us a required behaviour. We need to behave in a safe manner in a dangerous situation. So the situation is danger here, and that gives us a required behaviour of acting safely. At the bottom, the other key one is the members. So what people are we dealing with? What's our group? And the members influence the preferred behaviour. They will have a preferred behaviour. So we talked before about things like that women have a preferred behaviour of a democratic style, for example, whereas males may prefer the autocratic style. So the mix of people in the group and things like, as discussed before, about age and experience and that kind of thing, can also affect the preferred behaviour of that group. The last one doesn't have as much of an impact because the key thing about Challadurri's model is that the leader should be able to adapt, but the leader themselves will have their own preferred style, so that affects their actual behaviour. But it's this box that's the most important box. Okay, so the actual behaviour box is the key box. So actual behaviour, what the leader actually does. And Challadurri suggests, as I've just said, that the leader should adapt their actual behaviour according to 2 things. Firstly, the required behaviour, and secondly, the preferred behaviour. So I can take those 2 things into account, and what Challadurri suggests is that the more that the actual behaviour matches the required behaviour and the actual behaviour matches the preferred behaviour, that if those 2 things do match, then what we'll end up with is that group performance will be good, will be improved. So if the leader acts in a way that was required and the way the group wanted the leader to do so, the group will perform better, they'll play better. Also, the members, the individual members of the group, will be more satisfied with the leader in that situation. Now, it could be that you get one without the other. So it could be that we maybe match the required behaviour and that might impact well on group performance, but maybe we did it in a way here that preferred behaviour wasn't there, and maybe the individuals aren't as satisfied with the leader behaviour there because they didn't do it in a way that they wanted. But basically we're looking at those two things being matched from this actual behaviour. Does it match the required behaviour? Does it match the preferred behaviour? Though if it does, performance and satisfaction are improved. If it doesn't, then performance and satisfaction will go down. And that is the key point around Cheladue-Rice model. So that's the end of your leadership lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy trying to learn these stupid models. All the best.